Hey everyone, welcome into the latest edition of the Pokescast, production of the Casper Star-Tribune and Pokes Authority. I am Davis Potter, Wyoming beat writer for the Star-Tribune, and I'm joined, as always, by our managing editor and former Wyoming beatnik, Brandon Foster. Brandon, happy 100th, my man.
Yeah, I just realized I forgot to bring my air horn, so that would have been the moment right there. But yeah, whoever thought we would make it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't take full credit for this because I was not around when the Pokescast was created. I have to give you and our other former coworker Brady Oltmans the credit on getting it started. But yeah, we've made it. It's hard to believe we've reached triple digits now.
Yeah, I looked it up. I think it was August 30th, 2017, the first episode. So hard to believe it's still going, but credit to you, keeping it rolling. And I think just a quick sort of behind the scenes on like the origin of the Pokescast is we started this a little bit at like the urging of some people higher up the food chain who wanted us to get some podcasts going. It's been a long time since those people have been with the Star-Tribune, so all that to say, it's very much a labor of love now. I think we do it for the listeners. It's not anybody making us do it anymore. Not to say that they were 100% making us do it, but it's definitely something. Credit to you. Editing it every week. I don't miss that at all. But it's something we do for the readers. So I'm glad to see that it's alive and thriving.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and admit that the editing sucks. I hate it, but yeah, we should mention too. As you alluded to, this isn't possible without all of you guys listening. So we do appreciate our digital audience, so to speak, and listening to this, and our readers that may listen to and subscribers. Thank you guys so much because, like I said, you're the reason that we do this, and I know you guys want to listen and hear about what's going on with your Wyoming Cowboys. So yeah, I'm happy to do this, and you guys make that possible. So again, thank you very much. But Brandon, speaking of that, I guess the way I sort of decided to celebrate this 100th episode is getting some of our Wyoming fans or some of our listeners and subscribers involved via Twitter. I asked you guys to send in any questions that you guys might have pertaining to football, men's basketball, really any Wyoming athletics in general. And so some of you guys responded, and so we'll go through your questions, and we will answer them if we can. If not, we'll at least discuss, some parameters around your question. But we'll try to answer them to the best of our abilities. But Brandon, firstly, I just wanted to start this off by saying, or start with the depth chart, I guess, the post-spring depth chart that Craig Bowl said they were going to be releasing probably sometime within the week after the spring game. Yet they still have not released anything officially. But I mean, I don't think there's going to be any major surprises on there. I mean, look, everybody knows what this Wyoming team is and the personnel. I mean, to have so many people back, there's just not a whole lot of positions up for grabs, even though Craig Bowl and the staff talked about this spring. Technically, all the positions were open for competition. I mean, anybody that's followed this team over the last year or two and knows what all is coming back. I mean, there's no secret as to who's going to be at the top of this depth chart. A lot of places, but obviously the position that's under the microscope the most is quarterback, and I still think Sean Chambers is going to be listed as the starter going into the summer whenever they do decide to release this depth chart. I think I said on last week's episode that unless Levi Williams was just head and shoulders above Sean in terms of his passing and his accuracy this spring, I still think Sean with his the dimension that he brings with his legs, I just think it's too much to ignore. So if they're somewhat equal in terms of passing, I think Sean still has the leg up in that competition. I think he'll be listed as your QB1 going into fall camp. Now I do think this thing is close enough to where the competition will continue into the fall. So I don't think anything is going to be officially determined until whichever quarterback runs out there with the first team offense for that opening snap against Montana State. That's just sort of my gut feeling on it. Just going off what Craig Bowl has said and just sort of reading between the lines this spring, but. Another position that I think unexpectedly became heated in terms of the competition was that outside linebacker spot with Charles Hicks and Easton Gibbs. I still think Chuck's going to be your number one outside linebacker going into the fall. But I think that's a very similar situation to what they had back in 2019 with the linebacker position, where you had Logan and Cash, where obviously your top two linebackers, and then Chad Muma filled in as the number 3, sort of the backup at both of those spots. I think that's what you're going to see this fall, with Chad Muma now being the starter at middle linebacker, Chuck Hicks on the outside, and I think Easton Gibbs is going to be your number 3 guy that can sort of back up at both of those spots and fill in where he's needed. Because anytime that we mention, and I want to say we, I mean the media, asked Craig or any of the coaches about the linebacker position this spring, not one time did they mention a specific backup at middle linebacker. It was always, these are our top 3 guys in Chad, Chuck, and Easton. And so I think that those 3 have clearly separated themselves from the rest of the pack. I do wonder, maybe you get into fall camp, if maybe they want to actually get a designated backup at number 2 at the middle linebacker spot behind Chad. But sounds like right now, Easton's sort of going to be that guy that that tweener that can maybe go inside or out and like I said, fill in wherever he needs. But you look at some other spots. I mean, Aiden Evart's going to be your punt returner. Craig Bowl said that toward the end of the spring. Titus Swin may be involved at kick returner, though he didn't return any kicks during the spring game. I think they wanted to get a look at some other guys, but all in all, I mean, I like I said, I just don't think there's going to be that much intrigue. And I probably wouldn't read too much into the depth chart, even when they do release it post-spring, because I think there's going to be some things they still have to figure out come the fall.
Yeah, and kudos to you for having an answer on what the depth chart's going to look like, considering you haven't seen anyone in person down there in a year and a half at this point, and aren't seeing a whole lot of on-field stuff. So I'm loath to do too much more quarterback tea leaf reading at this point. I feel like we've exhausted that, but just thinking back on the last quarterback competition at UW that I covered in 2018 between Vanderwall and Nick Smith, I think they did name Tyler at the end of spring to be the starter, but then they said in the fall again it was still kind of open competition, and then Tyler kept the job, and I think he was always the favorite from the jump, although a little bit different circumstance with Nick being the more veteran player there. And I think, at this point, Sean, like you said, is the favorite. So, but, all that to say, if they are going to make a move, then it very well could come now instead of in the fall, even though I think, as you mentioned, they indicated that, the competition will continue, but it's possible that this is when we'll get our real answer.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate this real quick and then move on, because, like you said, this is sort of beating a dead horse at this point. I mean, we've talked about the quarterback competition ad nauseum, but I do think I think there may be more of an emphasis on who's the more consistent passer, because what both of those guys can do running the ball. That's no secret anymore. So I think it may come down to, hey, we go into fall and you sort of do this spring thing all over again, Now, obviously, you'll get more practices. I mean, they only had 15 in the spring, and you'll get, 20 plus in the fall before you play your first game. So, I think the passing game, I think, is going to be the emphasis again come this fall. And if somebody clearly separates themselves, if Levi were to significantly separate himself in that competition, I wouldn't be shocked to see him take the first snap with the offense in that first game against Montana State. But again, I think he would have to be significantly better than Sean in terms of the passing game and the accuracy in order for that to happen. So we'll see what happens, and once they do release that spring depth chart, post-spring depth chart, I should say, if they release it at this point, we'll have you covered at trib.com and postauthority.com. But Brandon, let's go ahead and let's get into some of these questions that I got on Twitter, and we'll go through them one by one, just as they are showing up on my in my mentions. But the first one, let's see, comes from Matthew Quigley. Matthew, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, but the question is, how thick do you think my rose-colored glasses are when I say maybe Bull's process is so old school that the quote-unquote building process he promised on day one is just coming to full fruition, and that we may have been impatient up till this point, 2016 being the fluke outlier perfect storm. Brandon, do you want to start with this, or do you want me to start with it? Doesn't matter to me.
You're welcome to. I probably have more thoughts on this one than any other question we've got, so if you want to jump in, and then I can pile on afterwards.
All right. Well, first of all, Matthew, thank you for the question. It's interesting because I think this is sort of a product of just what has happened over the last 3 years, particularly offensively, because when you do something for so long, and again, this even goes back to Craig Bohl's partnership with Brent Vegan, but when you do something for so long and it generally works more times than it doesn't, and look, you could say what you want to about the lack of productivity in the passing game and the lack of balance, but him and Brent Vegan, they recruited and developed 2 first-round draft picks at quarterback, and Carson Wentz and Josh Allen. And, when you do that and you have that kind of success, and you're at a place at Wyoming where you have 4 straight bowl-eligible seasons, which, is a level of sustained success that this program has not had a whole lot when you go back and look at the history of it. Sometimes you can get complacent. Sometimes it's easy to sit there and say, well, there's really no pressure on us right now, so what we're doing is working for the most part, and there's really no incentive to change things up when things are generally working as well as they have been. Just historically, when you talk about Craig Bohl and Brent Vegan and what they've been able to do, not only with the offensive production that they've had for the most part at their time at Wyoming, North Dakota State, but also the development of the quarterback position specifically. But I also like to, when I talk about, particularly with the offense, I always like to go back to Nick Saban about 10 years ago. It was around 2012, 2013. And, that was when Gus Malzahn brought in his hurry-up, no-huddle offense to Auburn as first the OC, then the head coach. You had some other coaches in the SEC running the up-tempo no-huddle offense. That was like the fad in college football 10, 12 years ago. And Nick Saban, him and Brett Bielema, when he was the head coach at Arkansas at the time, they were both head coaches in the SEC together. They complained about the hurry-up, no-huddle offenses, and started making these excuses about, well, is it really safe for players, and is it safe for the defense, for offenses to be going this fast, and you're going to tire guys out and all this stuff. And at a certain point, though, when Auburn and would beat Nick Saban and Alabama, and you had Hugh Freeze doing the same thing at Ole Miss, they beat Nick Saban twice. I think it was twice in a 3-year span. He saw that how effective it was, and eventually he said, you know what? If I can't beat him, join him, essentially, and changed his offense. I don't think anything drastically, but he evolved more with the times. And it's crazy to think where Alabama's offense was back in 2009, 2010, compared to what it has become here in 2021. I mean, you can argue that Alabama's become wide receiver U almost. I mean, you think about the receivers that Alabama's put in the league and the All-Americans they've had. Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, who just won the Heisman, Jalen Waddle. I mean, it's crazy to think what that offense has become and what he's developed it into over time, seeing what the trends, offensive trends in college football, the way they were going, and credit to him for adjusting to the times. And I think there's there comes a point in time, and particularly getting back to Wyoming and Craig Bohl's case, you can't sit there and have a one-dimensional offense that has zero plan B when the better defenses that you go up against stop what you do well. And that's obviously the running game for Wyoming. And if you're serious about being a Mountain West championship contender, you have to do something. You can't sit there and continue to have completion percentages in the 40s. Like, at some point, you've got to take a step back, look at yourself and say, okay, what are we doing? How do we evolve this thing to where we can be a dynamic, well-balanced offense while not necessarily getting away from our identity of being a tough, hard-nosed football team? And we'll see what this fall looks like. Again, it's there's no way to really know what all this is going to look like, what it's going to look like against real competition until they go out there and play games in the fall. But I think this I don't know if it's necessarily Craig Bohl just taking forever to get with the times. I think he had to be shown something, right? Like, he had to be shown, okay, this isn't working nearly as well as we need it to. We've got to do something. And it's a lot easier to sort of reflect and look back when you're coming off a third straight season where you had a completion percentage in the 40s and you had a losing record, right? I mean, that'll shake any coach because nobody wants to have a losing record. And anytime you do that, I think it sort of gets you in motion quicker in terms of reflecting on what you're doing and any changes that you want to make. I think that can be the sort of catalyst that you've never had before, particularly when you're coming off those 4 straight bowl-eligible seasons, and all of a sudden you're on the other end of the spectrum after last season with a 2-4 record. And I know that the pandemic obviously played into that, and you had a lot shortened season, but they probably would have had a losing record over the course of 12 games, just with the injuries that they had at quarterback. But so I think that's a very long-winded way of saying that. I think he was just sort of shocked into sort of adjusting more with the times now. And I think it's very interesting to think about if Brent Vigen hadn't left and created a natural opening at OC, would he have made a change? Mm-hmm. Would Brent Vigen still be here? I think that's the interesting question to me. And I don't know. I mean, I tend to think that he wouldn't have made a change. I think Craig Bohl is very loyal to his assistants, and you could certainly argue that maybe he's loyal to a fault. But regardless, I mean, hindsight's 20/20. They had an OC opening. He made and credit to Craig Bohl, I think he brought in someone with the intention of like he likes to say, re-engineering what they're doing offensively. And it's a lot easier and it gets your attention quicker when you have the kind of season that they did and you've had the sort of lack of productivity that you've had in the passing game the last handful of years.
Yeah. Well, I think with Nick Saban, maybe it was less if you can't beat him, join him, and more if you can't beat him 10 times out of 10, join him.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I think this question touches on kind of a pet theory I have with I think coaches in general in most sports, which is that I feel like teams tend to pull the trigger a little too quickly on changing regimes. Mm-hmm. And, I think I don't have a ton to back this up by any means, but when I kind of think of it like almost like a market inefficiency. I don't know if that's the right term, but a way, to kind of zig when others are zagging, that type thing. I feel like there's in most sports really kind of like a 3 to 4 year window you get where you come in with a new coach, and if you're not showing something by then, or if you haven't had that one breakout year, it's on to the next one. And I think especially in a sport like football, and especially in college, making those changeovers, that's a time-consuming process to reestablish or to establish your own program, especially if you are doing something substantially different than your predecessor, which is often the case. Teams like to hire coaches who switch it up rather than someone who's going to bring in the same style, and certainly was the case with Bohl. So I tend to think that if I were an athletic director, and certainly understand there's a lot of pressure behind the scenes with boosters and all that to make moves and show that you're committed to winning when things aren't going great. But I tend to think that if programs in general would be a little more patient, that that patience would pay off as when coaches get longer shots at implementing their systems. All that being said, when you add it up, it's 8 years now. Even that would be a lot of patience to say like, oh, it's going to be year 8's going to be a aha moment. But I think you touched on a lot of it with Bowl. To some extent, I think it might come down to what do you want out of your program? What do you want? Do you want consistency, or do you, are you willing to accept a certain ceiling? I think even if Bowl never changed the offense, if Vegan never left, if they never quite figured out the quarterback thing, or the passing game thing, I think you could probably rely on Bowl to stick around for another decade and consistently give you teams with a good defense, a good run game, and be Bowl eligible year in, year out. And, have exciting upset wins here and there, like the Missouri one. And, I think that's it. He's done enough in his time here to kind of expect that. I think my vibe is a lot of fans aren't thrilled with that idea. I think they want that ceiling, the idea of, even if there's maybe more inconsistency in there, I want a team to win a conference championship. I think for that you do have to have the passing game fixed, or it has to perform better than it has in recent years. And I think when Matthew referred to 06 as a potential outlier,
16,
obviously 2016 is the outlier. That was a year they had a great passing game because of a future NFL quarterback. And to some extent, 2017 too, if Allen stays healthy, I don't think they necessarily go to the title game, but they, I think come closer than people realize. So yeah, I think when you do have a quarterback who's able to make those explosive plays and at least be like baseline consistent. I know that was the critique of Allen when he was here, but in hindsight, he was more consistent than what they've gotten since, as far as, completion percentage and all that. I think, I don't know. I mean, I think it comes down to what are you willing to live with. Presumably every so often, you're not going to get a Josh Allen, probably, although, as you point out, they also recruited Carson Wentz. But, every so often you get a quarterback who comes in and kind of can up your game there on his own, and you have those years where you're going to the title game. I think I trust that's where this program is at. I think we've talked a lot about, what does it take to take the next step. And I think as we've hammered home, it's very much a question of the pass game. So, I think that's a very good question. And like I said, I tend to think that you should give coaches more of a chance than maybe programs do, especially when you're in a tough environment like Wyoming is, as far as it's not the easiest place to recruit and all that. Who's the guy you're going to necessarily replace Bull with? I don't know. But, I think in year 8, he's not on his seat's not warm at all coming off a 2-4 year, I don't think. But, he's, I don't think he can have like 2 more losing seasons and expect to not be on the hot seat. So, I think he's shown that he feels he's putting some urgency on himself.
Yeah. And just back to the origin of the question too, coaches have egos. Every coach has ego, right? Like, because every coach, when they're working their way up to being a head coach, they all have a background, right? And they all have mentors and people that they coached under and people they looked to that had certain styles of play. And Craig Bowl specifically, it was always Tom Osborne, because he was a longtime assistant at Nebraska. And that was what they did. That was what they were known for. Ground and pound, physical teams that performed at a really, really high level. I think there were some national championship teams that Craig Bowl was on the coaching staff for. And no coach wants to have to sit back and be told, hey, look, what you're doing isn't working. I mean, that's sort of a pride thing, right? Like, that's a shot to the ego when you this is sort of whatever coach it is, whatever identity they have, where they sit there and say, okay, this thing that I've been doing for so long, it's not working. Or even if it is working to an extent, and look, obviously we've talked to Nazim about the running game, like that's not an issue, but maybe you need to tweak some things to get this offense to where it lines up more with modern day college football, because you're not winning. Like 17-10 games are a thing of the past. And look, Wyoming has tried to win those games in recent years, and just look at like the last season, 17-9 loss, and their season finale against Boise State, they didn't score an offensive touchdown. I think the 3-point loss at New Mexico, had one offensive touchdown in that game. Like, these low scoring affairs are just they're so rare in college football now, where you have these offenses that are spreading it out all over the place and averaging 40, 50 points a game. I mean, you've got to adjust to the times, and that's why I brought up the Nick Saban analogy, because I give him credit. Now, look, was he having losing seasons? Obviously not. But there's a certain standard with Nick and that program in Alabama, and I think Hugh Freeze beating him a couple of times back when Hugh Freeze was at Ole Miss, I think that absolutely made Nick Saban sit back and say, we could win 8 or 9 games a year and go to a bowl, but Alabama fans aren't going to be happy with that. Like, and I don't think Nick Saban was going to be happy like that. Like, they expect to contend for national championships every season, and I know that's a whole different scale than what most programs are on. I mean, Alabama and Clemson right now are sort of in a stratosphere by themselves when it comes to the amount that they're winning and the expectations now, but I mean, Nick Saban's offense was getting passed over 10 or 12 years ago. And I think he saw what Gus Malzahn and Auburn were doing and what Hugh Freeze was doing at Ole Miss. And I absolutely think that sort of made him take a step back maybe quicker than he might have and say, look, I probably need to, if this is beating me, why shouldn't I sort of adapt to this? And why shouldn't I take on some level of inheriting, what they're doing, or adapting and add some elements of what they're doing offensively to what I should do. And when you're recruiting the kind of athletes that Nick Saban does at Alabama, if you're going to adapt to that, you can not only be as good as those teams, but be even better. And obviously that's what's panned out over the last decade or so. So I think in a similar way at Wyoming, Wyoming has not been able to beat the teams that it is gunning for when you have to win a Mountain West championship. I mean, Boise State, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, I don't think they've beat them since 2016, the safety game.
Or before.
Yeah. I mean, Utah State, Air Force. Those wins for Wyoming have been far and few between over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think Craig Bowl is, not only because of the lack of production in the passing game, but to add to that, it's the fact that that's keeping them from actually being legit Mountain West championship contenders. Because I don't think, if you look up in this coming season and it's late October, early November, and Wyoming is right there atop the division standings, maybe a game out, I guarantee you that their completion percentage is going to be in that at least 55, 60%. Because I don't think Wyoming is going to be anywhere close to contending if it's any lower than that. And I mean, just look at the last 3 years as sort of the evidence behind that.
Yeah, I think the only difference between Wyoming and Alabama is, I don't think they need, I don't even know how much of it is reacting to the way the game has changed, and how much of it is just getting to like a base, even like average level in that passing game. I think you look at Wyoming's pass game last year, it would have looked crummy in 1994. Like, I don't think, right. I don't think they can become whatever the Mountain West equivalent of wide receiver U is. But I also don't think they have to, I don't think, I think if they can get just sustainable, okay production out of that part of the game, they've got enough going for them in the other facets that they can at least be a contender. And, with Alabama, as you mentioned, it all comes back to kind of expectations, right? Like, I think Alabama could still try to win every game 6-3 and probably go to the SEC championship every other year, but that's not what, Bama fans are going to put up with.
Right.
And, Wyoming is getting, or I think is at that point where the status quo is maybe not going to bode well as far as fans' favorability of the way things are going. So.
Right, yeah. And look, Wyoming and its fan base isn't going to accept losing seasons.
Right.
And you're at a point now, as you mentioned, 8 years into this, where Craig Bowles talked about it, players have talked about it. The expectation now, particularly when you have as much experience as Wyoming has coming back, is to win a Mountain West championship. That's all the players talked about this spring. Like, that is their goal. And Wyoming's not doing that without a much more balanced offense and much more efficient offense when it comes to throwing the ball. So, I appreciate the question. I know we spent a lot of time on that, but we will now move on to our next question from Evan Johnson. He says, outside of the returning stars, who do you think has a breakout season on offense and defense? Evan, thanks for the question. Offensively, I'm going to say Trayton Welch. Now he is another guy that was hyped up this spring by Craig Bowl and some of the players. He's the sophomore tight end for Wyoming, and again, if Wyoming is serious about getting this passing game turned around, I think Trayton Welch could be a huge weapon for these quarterbacks, particularly in the middle of the field. Maybe some easy passes, to sort of get in a rhythm and get those quarterbacks' confidence up. But also, one of the things that Craig and even some of Trayton's teammates have talked about this spring is the fact of how good of an athlete he is and how well he goes up and makes contested catches. And that's something that we haven't seen out of any Wyoming pass catcher really consistently in a long, long time. They've talked about his ability to go over the middle, sort of go in between linebackers and or I should say behind linebackers and in front of safeties and make those tough catches. And he's a guy that they think can be a matchup problem. He was a receiver in high school. He goes about 6'3", 230 pounds. So he's a guy that you could keep in line as a blocking tight end, or even split him out in the slot and use him in a variety of passing trees and passing concepts to get him the ball if you feel like you have a mismatch that you can exploit. So that would be, for me, offensively, he would be the guy I would keep an eye out on. And then defensively, I don't know if this is necessarily a breakout player because he's been a starter now for a couple of years, but Keon Blankenbaker, to me, is maybe the most underrated player on Wyoming's defense. A really good nickelback. He's got the size. He's got the speed for it. Can do a lot of different things. And honestly, he might be their best cover guy in the secondary. He gets overlooked because he does play that nickel position and plays the slot. And when you think about cover guys, you obviously think about the guys on the outside. And they got some pretty good ones there with C.J. Colton and Azizi Hearn. But I think Keon Blankenbaker, I think he could have a really big year for them and just sort of add to the dominance that Wyoming has shown the last handful of years defensively.
Yeah, I'll mostly defer to you on this one since you've got far more intel than I do. I guess the only thing I would add, I don't know if I don't think he would fall into that category of stars that Evan mentioned, but I think Titus Swen's a guy to look out for. I think there's a lot to be said for a running back having fresh legs, him not playing last year, and he obviously turned out in the spring game. So I'm curious to see. Obviously X is the big brand name in that backfield, but who else kind of has an all-star season? Because I have a feeling they're going to put up some big numbers back there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious to see how they split up all the carries.
Yeah.
You've got, because again, that's one of many positions where Wyoming is stacked in terms of its depth and having everybody back. X and Trey Smith being the top two, and then Titus, I guess, being the quote unquote number 3 guy. But if he performs anything like he did in the spring game, and again, spring games are spring games, but
yeah,
I think he's got a skill set that they can utilize that may be different than any other back on the roster, just in terms of being the most complete back. But I just don't know. I don't know if he's going to get enough carries or get enough opportunities when you've got 2 established guys that, as long as they stay healthy, are going to be your workhorses. It certainly, at least that's the way it seems. Mm-hmm. I wonder exactly how many touches he's going to get this season. But yeah, he's absolutely another guy that at least I think can has the talent and the ability to be electrifying and make the most out of any time that he does touch the ball. I just wonder how many times he's actually going to touch it, and maybe that's why they have him on kick return, or at least Craig Bowl says he's a major factor as a potential kick returner. I mean, I wonder if that may be a way, if they can't get him the carries necessarily that they want to offensively, maybe that's just another way to get him involved, is to put him back there as a kick returner and get him involved in special teams. I think other players defensively, I think there are some young linemen that could sort of emerge next fall. Devon Harris, Jalen Pate, they got a lot of playing time last season with some of their other players having opted out. But I don't know enough about it. I haven't seen enough of them yet. The sample size is just so small, but they sort of flashed. But yeah, those are some players that I think could really emerge for Wyoming next season. Again, Evan, thank you for the question. Try to move on to the next one here. My phone will unlock. Okay, next question comes from Sidelines Wyoming. Actually, they sent in a couple, so we'll take them in order. Says, we returned the best running back room in the conference, one of the top O-lines, one of the top defenses, and at the very least, talent and experience at quarterback. Is this the year that Wyoming finally ends up on top of the Mountain West? And if not, what do you think it'll take for this team to get there? Appreciate the question. I think this one's pretty simple, and we've hit on it nauseam, but it's going to come down to quarterback play. Because Wyoming has virtually everything else. I mean, we talked about the amount of experience that they have back. I mean, it's not every year that you return your entire backfield intact. It's not every year that you return your top two quarterbacks. It's not every year that you return your entire starting offensive line intact. It's certainly not every year that you return every defensive starter. So, and look, there are obviously a lot of other teams are in the same situation with COVID last year in the NCAA granting everybody a free year of eligibility. But if you go back to 2019, this team was nearly almost as experienced as this one was. I mean, there were a lot of expectations going into the 2020 season until Sean Chambers and Levi Williams got hurt, and that all just sort of came to a crashing halt, obviously. I mean, there just wasn't a whole lot of – I mean, they were supposed to bring back their entire offensive line in 2020, and they did. So, I mean, the makeup and composition of this team, at least personnel-wise, in terms of the upcoming season, isn't much different than what they had last season. It's all about, first of all, keeping your quarterbacks healthy, which that is the if you're asking what's it going to take for Wyoming to legitimately compete for Mountain West Championship, it's number one is keeping your quarterbacks healthy. Because again, I mean, we've talked about any team that loses not only its starting quarterback but both of its top two quarterbacks. I mean, it's going to be a tough road to hoe for anybody who does that. And obviously, Wyoming has had the worst luck in terms of injuries at its quarterback position. So, got to keep them healthy, and then they've got to be effective. They've got to be productive in the passing game. And again, I mean, if this team does not complete somewhere around 55-60% of its passes, I don't think it can legitimately compete for a championship. Again, this is beating a dead horse again. But I mean, you've got to have a plan B when teams take away your plan A. And look, it's great to sit there and run for 400 yards against a bad UNLV team, or run for a bunch of yards against Hawaii when they come to the mainland and play in a frozen tundra basically that they never play in. But what are you doing when Boise State, Utah State, Air Force, some of these teams that you have to beat in your division in order to get to the Mountain West Championship game? What are you doing when they take away your running game and you're not ripping off 5-6 yards a carry? That's been the issue the last handful of years, is not having something that you can pivot to offensively to stay on the field and to score points. Because as soon as they took away the running game, you were done. And that's got to change for them to be a legitimate conference championship contender.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if this helps or not, but I think a lot of the equation when you're saying, okay, how does Wyoming get to, as they put at the top of the Mountain West, I assume that means, at least going to the championship game, and when he's, they said finally, so yeah, I guess winning it. I feel like until proven otherwise. Boise is the hurdle there. Boise's the team you got to get past, and there's a coaching change right now on the Broncos, right? First year without Harsin. I mean, obviously Harsin continued the success that the program had before him, so it's not like there's necessarily a reason to expect a huge drop off. But at the end of the day, that's going to be a huge factor in whether or not you get to play in that game. Obviously, the one time they beat Boise, but looking back on that year too, it's I think important to keep in mind that how thin the margins were between them getting and not getting. And, the thing that team did was win the close games. It won that crazy game against Boise with the safety. They, late comeback there. They win, on a failed 2-point conversion against San Diego State. They, if you don't win those tight ones, you don't get to play in that game. So the window hasn't proven to be huge for what does it mean for Wyoming to get in that game, let alone win it. But that year's team, it's probably important to remember too, it didn't have the strongest defense. The underlying numbers weren't great on that unit. It forced a lot of turnovers in good situations and scored a lot on defense, but overall it was not the strength of its team. So if you compare this one to that, I think you could argue that this defense is as strong as that offense was, and it's just kind of a question now of can you get the offense roughly up to where that defense was as far as how well it performs. And that's not a perfect comparison, obviously. If you have a decent offense and puts up 6 touchdowns, I think that's very different than having a great defense who's going to hold a team to 14 points. But I'm trying to find a way to answer this question other than just saying quarterback, I guess, because that's what it's going to come down to.
Right? Yeah. I mean that we're not breaking any news here. I mean it would be one thing if you looked on the defensive side of the ball, maybe and said, oh, they have a huge hole here. That I don't think they do. I think this defense has been one of the Mountain West best for the last 2 or 3 years. Ever since Craig Bowl made the first change at DC and brought in Scotty Hazelton. Of course, you were on the beat back then, Brandon. But I mean, ever since then, they've went from Scotty Hazelton to Jake Dickert, then Jake Dickert left, and they've gone to Jay Sawvell now. And the production hasn't dropped off. And like I said, you return all 11 starters on defense. They should be, again, a top 3 defense in the Mountain West. You know what you have offensively in terms of the running game. Every starter back in the offensive line, every running back in the backfield. I mean, that's what this is going to come down to. Can you make teams respect your passing game? And I should say that the elite teams, the teams that you're going to have to beat. And I always go back to that 2019 season when I was sort of talking about this because, and I certainly remember, I'm sure Wyoming fans certainly remember, Brandon, you talked about winning the close games. They're I think 4 of their 5 losses at San Diego State, at Boise State, at Utah State, at Air Force. All of those games were 1-possession games where I think they averaged, Air Force was a 1-possession game until the Falcons hit them with a really long touchdown pass, I think with 2 minutes to go in the game, and ended up winning 20-6 or something. But for I think 58 minutes of that game, it was a 1-possession game. And in those 4 losses, Wyoming averaged 16, 17 points a game. I mean, they didn't score more than 22 points in any of those games. It's you got to be able to do that, And that's, again, that goes back to Boise State took away their run game for the most part. San Diego State in the second half, because I remember Wyoming actually had some pretty good success running the ball in the first half. Then San Diego State, who had, I think was the top defense in Mount West that year, they adjusted. Second half, Wyoming didn't do anything on the ground. Boise State was a really good defense. Air Force was a really good defense, excuse me. Utah State was pretty good. So, those teams took away the run game, and Wyoming did not have a plan B to go to. And that again, we've said it kind of for the billionth time, but that's the one thing missing from this team right now, at least in terms of being able to show it consistently. Because, again, we don't know until they go out there this fall. We won't know what they look like offensively. And if they'll have a counterpunch to some of the better defenses when the running game isn't humming like they're used to it humming.
Yeah. And I think this I might be making this up, but I feel like it's a little tougher to rely on offenses to pull out those close wins when it's not set up as an explosive offense, right? Like that 2016 team was like, okay, we just need a few long passes here. We're in field goal territory. We can close out the game. I feel like it's a bigger ask to say like, all right, we got one more drive. We just need to string together, 12 straight 5-yard runs and we're there. I mean, not to say that they have not had explosive runs. Obviously they do, but I think, that's a perk of having an explosive offense through the air, which they don't really have right now. So, and I think the other, obviously this question is pretty optimistic about, the Pokes, as they put it, have the best running back room in the conference, one of the top O-lines, very, one of the best defenses. But I think the weird element to all this is I bet a lot of teams, or I would guess, at least in the group of 5, are feeling rosy about this season just because you're used to losing so many key contributors in general from your average college football team. And, a lot of teams aren't losing those players because of the ability to come back. And you do have to factor in that other teams are having that same experience right now. So I don't know, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I think, there's certainly some unknowns going into as weird of a situation as this.
Right, but which is all the more reason to get your offense on track, right? Because you're going to be seeing a lot of the same players from these same defenses that you have not been able to score against much last year or two. So, even more reason to find that balance and get some of that explosiveness in your passing game back. So, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't think that's a really complicated answer. Just considering the state of Wyoming's program right now and what it has coming back, the pieces that it has around its quarterbacks, it needs, whether it be quarterback, the accuracy, whether it be consistency from receivers catching the ball, you got to have it. I mean, I think that is keeping Wyoming from being a legitimate conference contender. Moving on, Brandon, another question from Sidelines Wyoming says, what do you think guys like Keegan Kreider and Xavier Valladay's path to the league looks like? Those are two of the guys that I feel have the most realistic shot, but what do you think they'll have to look like this year to get a shot at being drafted? We've talked about this, because I wrote about some of Wyoming's top draft prospects for our paper a few weeks back, and if you guys have not seen that, want to go check it out, you can check it out at trib.com and pokesauthority.com. But in terms of X, I just think he has to keep doing what he's done, and I do think Tim Polassek's plan to get running backs more involved in the passing game, I think that's only going to help him and help elevate his draft stock. But I mean, you're talking about a guy that's been the Mountain West leading or second leading rusher on a per game basis for the last 2 years, and he's shown that he can be durable for the most part. I mean, he's had a couple injuries last few years, but he's only missed one game because of those, if I remember correctly. He missed the New Mexico game last year and then came back for Boise State, though he wasn't very effective. But, I think his skill set translates well to the NFL, and I think he's got enough experience and game tape and played enough at this point where NFL teams know who he is. But obviously another big season as Wyoming's primary back, if he can stay healthy, is only going to boost his draft stock. And again, if he can go out there and catch 20 balls, in addition to, if he runs for 1,000 yards again, I don't know if there's anything more in terms of having to be a lot more productive than he's been, because he's been pretty productive the last couple of years when he's been on the field, and so I don't think there's a whole lot more that he needs to do other than just keep doing what he's doing and round out his game as much as possible in terms of being a 3-down back. Not only catching passes out of the backfield, but be able to hang in there as a pass protector, pick up blitzes, things like that. That's what's going to not only attract more NFL teams to you if you're able to be a 3-down back, but obviously it's going to keep you on the field more and get you more playing time. But I do think X is the guy that's going to be drafted. Now I'm not a NFL draft Nick or whatever, so I'm not going to sit here and try to predict what round or anything like that. But I do think he's going to be drafted, and then in terms of Keegan Kreider, think Chase Roulier when it comes to Keegan, a guy that's been a starter basically since his freshman year, 30-something straight starts. As durable as an offensive lineman as there is. I think he's a guy that could sneak into the late rounds, much like Chase did. A smart guy that plays center. Obviously, if you're playing center, that takes a certain level of wisdom to run that position with everything that goes along with it. Not only being sort of the anchor of the line, but calling out protections and getting guys where they're supposed to be. And that there aren't many more experienced interior offensive linemen in college football than Keegan Kreider. So, I think he's, if there are teams looking at a center, and he could also play guard. So, team looking for that in the later rounds of next year's draft. I think Keegan is going to be a guy that's going to be on their boards at least.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder with offensive linemen, I maybe you have better insight than me, like how much on-field tape and on-field production weighs into things as opposed to, just kind of how you're built and what they see at the combine and all that. I mean, obviously you have to play well on the field, but and I think places like Pro Football Focus and stuff like that, maybe are evaluating linemen in more tangible ways or ways that you can put numbers to. But at the end of the day, it's not an easy position to put numbers on, besides, how many sacks you're not giving up. So I always wonder about that, a little bit of what does a great season look like? Mostly you would think it means let's, stay healthy. The better the offense does, obviously that helps. That was the case in 16 with Roulier. But I always wonder about that with linemen. And then with X, I think it wouldn't hurt. He has the benefit of last year taking just under 100 carries, but I don't think it would hurt if they do share the workload a little bit, because if you look back to 2019, he took 247 rushes. He's not going to have maybe the number at the end of his career that worries an NFL team as far as how much mileage there is on him, just by virtue of last year being a short year. And, in 2018, he only took 71 carries. But still, I don't think it would hurt if he's coming off this year with good numbers, but not 250 carries.
Right.
And, yeah, like you said, staying healthy, I think it'll be another big one.
Yeah. No, and going back to your point about linemen and interior offensive linemen specifically, I do wonder how much, getting them in the room at the combine and drawing up plays and calling out, fronts and maybe like the whiteboard stuff. And again, going back to the mental aspect of the game for those guys, because I do the physical part of it's one thing, and Keegan's not a small guy. I've mentioned this before. He's not a sawed-off center. I mean, he's 6'3", 6'4", right at 290 pounds. So a good-sized player, particularly that position. But yeah, I think the cerebral part of it has a lot to do with the kind of interest that you draw from NFL teams at that position. Because there's, and I mentioned this before too, there's a lot that goes into playing center specifically that a lot of people just don't understand. Watching it with the naked eye, I mean, you have to call out fronts. You have to signal where you think that the pressure's coming. If they give a blitz look, maybe from the linebackers, sliding protections to the left or right, depending on where you think the blitz is. I mean, there's a lot of mental things that you have to take care of as a center. That's just as much of your game, if not more so, than the physical part of it. So, who knows? And it's all about fit too, right? I mean, it just depends on what team might need somebody in the later rounds of a draft, or what teams might need more of a all-purpose back like X is, rather than a guy, because he's not going to be a guy. He's not a 230, 40-pound guy that's just going to bang it between the tackles 30 times a game. I mean, that's not who X is. But he can run it 20 times and get him 3 or 4 or 5 catches a game. I mean, he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. So I mean, it all depends on what a team might need. So that could obviously increase someone's draft stock or or keep it where it is.
And
but
win
aside,
games.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I just because
that never.
I feel like you're gonna have a little bit of a coaches are always gonna probably have a bit of a bias towards Power 5 programs, and if they're looking at a Mountain West kid, and they also look at they didn't even have a winning season the last couple of years. I mean, it's a minor thing, but it wouldn't hurt, I don't think. Just kind of overall reputation of the program.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alexander Madison, the running back from Boise State a few years ago, he went pretty high to the Vikings, I think it was. And then obviously, well, this is a while back now, but Ryan Matthews out of Fresno, I think he was a first-round draft pick, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, look, man, if there's enough scouts and eyes around the country that, if you produce well enough, I mean, Power 5 is probably going to be more favored just because of the quote unquote level of competition that you go up against. But I mean, look, if you can produce and you can play, you're going to be found, and you're going to get a shot. Brandon, well, we're going to move on to the next question, and this is actually the last question. A question related to women's basketball from Shay Foster. Shay asks, is Coach G coming back for the final year of his contract? Shay, appreciate the question. Coach G, obviously a reference to Gerald Mattinson, Wyoming's women's basketball coach. And this is an interesting question. I think it's a fair question because when Gerald Mattinson was promoted to take over for Joe Legursky after Joe retired a couple years back, he's only signed a 3-year contract rather than the 5-year contract that most coaches usually get at Wyoming. And I remember I think Tom Berman, Wyoming's athletic director, told another former Wyoming beatnik, Robert Gagliardi, that was because Gerald could not promise him that he would be around for 5 years in terms of coaching. And so now you've got Gerald entering what is now the last year of his contract at Wyoming because he's obviously been there 2 years now as the head coach. And to answer the question, I have not heard anything about Gerald Mattinson not returning next season. Now, I have not talked to Gerald since the season ended. And I'm working on talking to some other people and asking around, but I have not heard any indication that or anything about Gerald not returning for his 3rd year. And you would think that it's been 3 months since their season ended. You would think if he was going to make that decision, he would have made it by now. So you can, obviously get your next coach in here and you get him in here in time for summer workouts and all of that. So, I mean, I think Gerald is coming back. Like I said, I have not heard anything to the contrary, but definitely something we'll look into.
I am so dumb and clearly not on the UW beat anymore that I thought this question was about Mike Grant. I was like, I don't know why, what insight they have there, but yeah, I'd have to think the job is Gerald's if he wants it.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I feel like you've got some tenure there now when you make it to the big dance, but it looks like he's 62 according to Wikipedia, so that's an interesting question, and I for Pokes fans' sakes hope he's there for a little while still. Yeah,
and also it's also interesting too because normally when a program, particularly like Wyoming, that doesn't do it all the time, makes an NCAA tournament appearance, usually you get a contract extension. You're rewarded with that. And that hasn't happened yet. So I don't know. That is a very interesting question. Again, thanks for the question, Shay. But I'll do some asking around and see if I can get something more definitive on that. But like I said, I have not heard that he will not be returning. So, all right. Well, that's all the questions. Again, appreciate everyone who submitted questions for us to talk about. Made for some good fodder on here. But Brandon, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. You got any parting shots before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. Just it's. Cheers to another 100 episodes of the Pokescast, and it's always like I don't know if you listen to a lot of podcasts, but I feel like you always, will hear shows do like, hey, it's our 1000th today, and do something special. So it's fun to have a milestone of our own to celebrate. So thank you guys for sticking with us for 3.5 quarter years or whatever it is at this point, and we'll keep them coming your way.
Yeah, seconded, agreed wholeheartedly with that. It sucks that we're like 100 miles away. So I wanted to be like in the same place where we should like eating cake together or something to celebrate this. I don't know.
That's true. If you guys want to mail each of us our own cakes, we won't say no.
Yeah, my favorite is cookie cake, by the way. So if anybody is thinking about that, what's yours?
Good one. My favorite cake. I'm much more of a pie person.
Okay.
That said, my girlfriend's birthday was this week, and a friend of ours made her a snickerdoodle cake because she likes snickerdoodles, and that was incredible. I'm being a good boyfriend and not eating the last slice that's sitting in my fridge right now, but I would eat that if you sent it to me.
Yeah, you're a smart man. That relationship would be otherwise. All right. Well, quick programming note before we get out of here. I don't know when we are going to have our 101st episode of the Pokescast, because this is, I guess, officially summer now for at least in my situation. And so at least I will. My schedule's sort of all over the place this summer. I'm obviously taking a lot of time off this summer before football season starts back in August. So I don't know. We'll sort of play it by ear. We'll and keep you guys posted as to when our next episode will be. But it'll sort of be hit and miss this summer because I'll be out a lot. Brandon, I don't know if you're taking any time off this summer, but it's sort of that time of year where it's slower, and you use some vacation time before football gets started. But
yep, yeah, I can't even remember. I should know this, but how the schedule worked back when I was on the beat if we were recording in the off season. But we're, I guess, psyching everyone out, getting them pumped up for 100 and make them wait. But no, I think we've probably discussed how important the quarterback position is enough that it wouldn't hurt for us to have some material to work with.
Hey, Brandon, did you know that the quarterback position is going to be important for Wyoming this fall?
Scoops. Hashtag scoops.
All right, yeah. But yeah, we'll be back here and there this summer, and then we'll be back full time, I guess, probably end of July, early August, right when Wyoming starts up fall camp again. But be sure to check out all of our coverage at trib.com and pokesauthority.com. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at pokesauthority. You can follow me on Twitter at Davis E. Potter. Give Brandon a follow on Twitter at bfoster91. This podcast is on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Omni. So be sure to subscribe, download it, give us that 5-star rating. This podcast can also be found on our website at the Pokescast link, which is updated every time a new episode is published. Brandon, appreciate you joining me. And as always, appreciate you guys for listening, and we will catch up with you down the road.
Yeah, and a quick plug for former Pokecast co-host Brady Altman has a piece in the Star-Tribune this week on Sidney Thorvalds and the all-world runner from Rollins. We commissioned a piece out of Brady, so there's your 100th episode reunion right there.